Hey folks, today I'm going to be doing a proof of concept video on a unique interaction between the Morning Frost boots and the Frostclaw mage skill. This is something that I've wanted to build around for quite some time. Basically what's going on is the Morning Frost boots adds 1 flat melee and spell damage per point of dex, and because Frostclaw can convert melee damage into spell damage, for Frostclaw you actually get the Morning Frost effect twice, so it ends up creating a pretty powerful synergy between the two. And that's what I'm going to be building around today. This is a offline character, full disclosure, using gear that I believe to be realistically farmable. So there's no double T7s here, no crazy amounts of LP or anything like that. If you do like this sort of really wonky theorycraft proof of concept type video, please let me know by leaving a like on the video and also letting me know your thoughts on the format or the build or anything like that. And yeah, let's jump into it. I want to start by saying that this is not going to be a proper build guide. It's going to be more of like a high-level overview of how this interaction works. I'm just throwing some ideas out there so you guys can try this if you want. This is going to be a build that is definitely 1000 corruption viable. Most bosses you will kill extremely quickly. As you saw, we killed T4 Julra before it even could do the slam. So the damage is actually not that bad. For farming most stuff, 1000 corruption, most bosses, it's fine. Uber Aberoth is going to be much harder than one of the S tier single target builds. Anyway, how the build functions is, as I mentioned, Morning Frost giving us all the flat damage. We're stacking Dex. Ladle is just multiplying that flat damage. There's pretty good synergy here, and then we have further synergy with the flat damage in Glamdring. So it ends up being 280 flat damage for free from the Dex, and then with the 1.5 multi in Ladle, it works out to somewhere around like 420-ish flat damage per hit of Frostclaw. And then with the way we currently have Frostclaw set up, each cast of Frostclaw can hit 15 times. So you take that 420-ish flat base damage, and then you multiply that by 15 hits, and then you multiply it by the crit multi. We have the increased damage, we have Shred, we have Pen. And you can see where the damage comes from. That's basically it. We're just scaling it through that. And everything kind of just fits together pretty well. In addition to that, we also have a bunch of extra damage from the Ice Barrage synergy. So this works well if you're using cold Frostclaw. Since we are using Morning Frost, most of our damage is cold. So getting 60% more damage while Ice Barrage is up is pretty nice. This also itself does pretty decent damage. And Frostclaw even speeds the projectiles up. So you can see here, we're getting like over 1 million DPS just from the Ice Barrage hitting as well. You can get that even higher. So that goes up to like 1 million DPS as well, buffing the Frostclaw and all of our other cold damage. So that's pretty good. And because we're also hitting a lot, I tried the Spark Nova. So we have a bunch of added flat damage and we have Ladle. So this is not terrible because of how many hits we're getting. It gives you a little bit more AoE. When you take the Volley of Glass node in Frostclaw, you lose the AoE component of it. So the Spark Nova, I find, does help a little bit with that. I even considered doing Ellie Nova. You could realistically do Ellie Nova with the setup too. Then you just grab Spark Charges because you have a bunch of flat damage anyway, even without Enigma. And then you can just do the standard Ellie Nova stuff, and then just take these nodes. You'd probably want a +4 relic. So for the bossing, you'll generally want to self-cast the Ice Barrage because it gives you the more damage, it does damage itself, and then you're going to be spamming Frostclaw. So the Ice Barrage does have homing built into it, but it starts going at the same direction you initially cast it, and it doesn't really change. So it doesn't matter if the Ice Barrage is hitting that much. It's an extra bit of damage, but in general, it's just for the more multi on Frostclaw. And then you're also going to be using Frostwall because that gives you a bit of a damage multi. This is completely optional. You don't have to use this if you don't want. And then Meteor, I've included this just to help with the mana sustain. So we are doing the mana refund tech with Meteor. So you just increase the cost as much as you can, and then you get portion of mana cost recovered, and then you combine that with teleport. The spell cost is refunded after TP, So if your mana is, you're missing a bunch, every time you TP, you just do teleport right after and you just get most of your mana back. It's pretty good recovery. I know a lot of people don't like this. This is optional. You could get some mana regen if you want. You could even spec into it in the Sork tree. You could get it on affixes. You could run Focus. You could run Mana Strike. You could unspec some of the points in Frostclaw to help with mana sustain. You have options if you don't like the Meteor tech. But yeah, that's just what I went with because to me it feels good. Let's quickly jump into 1000 Corruption Echo while we talk a bit more about the build. This is one of the shrine maps. I'm not going to grab the shrines though, just so you can see what the build actually looks like. And yeah, the playstyle is pretty similar to the Frostclaw Spark Charge build of Season 1, if you're familiar with that. The only difference is we do lose a little bit of the AoE that the Spark Charges have, but we make some of that back with the Spark Novas and all the flat damage they get, so it's not actually too bad. The single target on like killing tanky rares and champions is also pretty good, especially if you do use the Ice Barrage, which adds quite a bit. The bossing is actually pretty respectable. If you want to compare to some of the S tier builds like the Falconers and the Time Rot and stuff like that, we're definitely not quite there. So this is more of like just a fun build to play. If you enjoy the Frostclaw gameplay, you just find that a fun skill to play with, this could be a build for you to try. And yeah, hopefully have a good time with. But yeah, you can see the rare enemies even here at 1000 Corruption. They do melt pretty quickly. And there we have a champion. Also melts. Currently using Wrong Warp. Ladle is quite a bit more damage than Wrong Warp. But Wrong Warp, you do get a bit of the mobility. Although Ladle does have much nicer teleports, so either option works. It's up to you. Now, in the interest of keeping this brief, I'll quickly run through the skills, passives, and items. So we'll start with the skills. I already mentioned Frostwall is basically just here to give us a little bit more damage and access to a cleanse. It doesn't really do a whole lot other than that. If you're a Rune Master, you can get a more multi from this, but we are not Rune Master. So this is a flex spot. It also costs a pretty good chunk of mana, so I'm kind of on the fence if this is even worth taking. You could drop this for something like Snap Freeze, Flame Ward, even Arcane Ascendance if you want. Get some damage out of that for bossing, like bursting them down. Yeah, there's quite a few options. You could even do Mana Strike cooldown. Yeah, quite a few different things that you could swap out Frostwall for. This is the flex pick. Next, Ice Barrage. So this is buffing our cold damage globally. This is pretty strong. Give you a bit of DR for cold as well, which is nice. And then this itself ends up doing quite a bit of damage. So you get a lot of projectiles as you hit them, and as the duration goes on, it gets faster, the speed, so the damage ramps up. You can see the fire rate goes up against rare enemies and bosses as well, so you can get quite a bit of DPS out of this. And this does synergize with the node here in Frostclaw, so the more you hit it with Frostclaw, the faster the Ice Barrage hits. So this goes up quite a bit with the Frostclaw hits. Then we have Teleport. So Teleport, I'm basically just using this for the next spell free with the Meteor tech. So the Meteor refund here, mana recovered, and when you combine that with the next spell is free, you end up with a pretty potent mana generator for that. So we'll just burn some mana, and then you can see our mana regen goes up quite a bit. And that's basically what these two things are for. I also have a bit of a buff for my armor, and otherwise we just take stun immunity, which is pretty nice, and all of the cooldown we can get. If you go with something else, not Meteor, you would unspec the next spell is free, and then there's a bunch of ward stuff here. So like this node, without all of the +6 cooldown, you'd be casting this like around every 3 seconds. and this is like 150 ward-ish here. You can have some ward retention, and this is, what does this work out to? It gives you like 20% of your life-ish. So this is like 300 ward. This ends up to like well over 100 ward per second if you want to use this as a ward generator, which is not bad. But Flame Rush also kind of does the same thing. So if you don't want to use the free TP tech, it might be better to just take Flame Rush and do that instead. Then Meteor, the whole reason we take this is just to make the mana cost high. The Meteor itself does a little bit of damage because we have so much flat and scaling and stuff, but compared to everything else we're doing, it's really not that much. And then the Frostclaw tree. So you do want to take all the minus mana in here. This is pretty much mandatory if you want to sustain. Then we go down here, we take Volley of Glass and Hand of Merditis. So Volley of Glass is for shotgunning. Hand of Merditis is to add 2 extra projectiles. So this ends up being basically like 60% more damage because you go from 3 per bounce to 5 per bounce. So it's pretty significant. If you can't mana sustain, you take out Hand of Merditis. This will help with mana like a lot because Volley of Glass is also multiplying this added flat. So just keep that in mind. The Ballista, as I said, this buffs the Ice Barrage. That's why we're taking that. You could also path up here and take the Novas if you want. This is an option, but that would be a bit of a different build. If you drop Meteor, you could do that. And then lastly, we come down here. With this configuration, we have 3 bounces hitting. Basically, you have the initial hit. You have the, I guess I'll just show it. So you can see when it leaves me and it hits the target, that's one of the sets of hits. And then you can see it leaves back towards me and then back away. Both of those will also hit. So it's 5 per bounce and then 3 bounces hit. So 15 hits is what you're getting out of this with this setup. You could do this, the third cast, but it will just bounce away unless you also have Frozen Malice to do some targeting shenanigans. This doesn't end up being better than this, and it costs more mana. So that's why I have Frozen Malice instead of Ever Onward. Then moving over to the passives, just quickly run down. Int is good because you're getting a bunch of ward retention, increased damage. This also has res and stuff like that. Increased damage is good. We have cooldown on our TP and cast speed. These are all good. Crit is obviously good, so we are crit stacking. Then Spellblade, I just take this because int is strong and it's kind of just free, a little bit of ward decay. It's not bad. Then Rune Master, DR is really big. If you're going into higher corruption, you do want DR. And then we just take this pathing. We get a bit of int. We get some ward per second. This helps our stable ward numbers. It's really useful. And then this is a really powerful node if you're using a catalyst with crit mitigation and int. And then we take crit multi with a wand. You can also take this for a bit more speed if you want more move speed and cast speed. It doesn't work that well with the high cooldown teleport though, just because the cooldown is like 5 seconds or something. So yeah, you'd need a lot of points to make that worth it. Then in Sork, the cast speed and spell damage, these are pretty big. They actually give move speed too. These are really strong nodes if you're using something that cares about spell damage and cast speed. So I take these. This, just for pathing, ward per second, a little bit here is not bad. You can take this mana regen. This would help sustain as well. So you could drop some of this other stuff and take that. Then we have spell crit per int plus int. This is just a really strong node on any crit spell build. Then we take crit chance just for pathing to get the Spark Nova, just because of all of our flat damage being added and also the little bit of AoE it gives us. This is actually not terrible. It might not be worth it though. Maybe play around with that. And then a little bit more crit in crit multi. These are really strong. Then 5 ward decay threshold per int. This is quite a bit. It's pretty good nodes. And then cooldown just so we can get our teleport up quicker. And the refund, this synergizes well with our meteor tech. And it also helps us sustain the Frostclaw, just baseline. Because we're not at 1,000 mana, it's only doubled, This is something like, what's the math on that? 20% of 35, 7. So this is like, what, 14-ish% mana refunded on average, something like that. So yeah, these are pretty good as well. Then moving over to the items. So the Bone Clamor, if you are dex stacking and you also care about int, this is just one of the best helmets in the game. It's really strong, giving all of the stats that you care about and a bit of ward per second, also some armor. Ladle is basically just best in slot because of how much flat damage we have for free. It also gives you cast speed per int. It's really good. The Orion's Eye, just as a defensive option, it gives us a lot. The mana buffer helps quite a bit too. The less fire damage Void taken helps you deal with some of the deadly Void stuff. It's pretty strong. The Core of the Mountain, this has the periodic immunity that I'm a pretty big fan of. It just helps general survivability. In Echoes, you don't get like bursted down as much. And then you have all attribute giving us int, giving us a little bit of mana, giving us dexterity. This is pretty good, but you have other options here if you want to do something different. Then we have some flat crit here. This is going to be really important if you don't have the Uber Relic. You'll need the flat crit, and you'll probably need to slam like spell crit. You could also use the spell crit gloves, the Blood Mage gloves. If you don't have Uber Relic, it'll help a lot with getting capped on crit. Or you could use Prismatic Gaze, but I am a fan of the Crystal Skull. It has a lot of really good stats. Flat crit, int, ward retention, these are all good. Then red rings, because we are minus res with Morning Frost, red rings are really good. If not, you probably want an exalted ring that has resist on them, and then dexterity or int or something like that. The Orion's Descent, this gives us a bit of crit mitigation and helps with our resist here. And then the gloves, more of the same. I have int here. You could do dex slam, but at this point it doesn't matter that much. Frailty we don't really need because we already have it on the wand for free. And yeah, this is just like filler. You could put a few uniques here if you want, like the Blood Mage. Some other stuff is probably fine. Then Morning Frost, this is kind of like the star of the show here, giving us the flat damage to attacks and spells, double dipping on the Frostclaw. Just a good item overall for damage. And then finally, I have the Uber Relic. So Uber Relic is flat crit, its attributes. I have crit multi-slam on here, have some DR. This is extremely strong. If you can't have this, you could probably do something like Twisted Heart, which would give you quite a bit of sustain. Otherwise, you could do like an Exalted Relic with the stats that you want. Dex, crit multi, resist, all that stuff. Resist on the Relic would help quite a bit with filling out your gear. So you could do that. And then finally, Blessings, crit multi, all res, armor. Then we have Cold Shred. It's a little bit hard to get Cold Shred, so I just did it here. If not, you can do like Fizz Res or something like that. And then ward per second, you could do like mana or percent cold damage is probably also good if you want more damage. And that's what we have for Blessings. And then Idols. Cold Pen is really good to get on idols. You can get it on the small idols or the stout idols. Cold Pen basically is like a damage multiplier, so these are not bad. The mana efficiency, these are quite strong for sustain, and then you can also get the enchant, the flat spell. This is not actually doing that much here because we already have so much for free from Morning Frost, but if you can get this enchant on the idols, it's just a no-brainer. It's really strong. Even still, like 48 flat damage between these still does end up adding quite a bit. And then we have another smaller one here. This could be res. If your res are not maxed, you could swap some of this around for more resist. But yeah, a little bit of mana ward per second is not bad for the defense. So anyway, that's where we're at. That's the build. Hope you guys like it. If you made it this far, I hope I earned the like and the subscribe if you're not already. And yeah, as always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.